Hi, everybody. I'm Alyce-Kay from Threshold of Hineni and the Widow Reckelhouse. And I just want to share something. This is actually specifically for my Pray, Serve, Go group on Facebook, which you're welcome to join. I'll have the information below so that you can join if you want to. But I'm going to go ahead and share this with everybody because I think it could help other people as well. But in that group right now, we're talking about things like how to start a ministry and how to find a ministry. You want to do something for God, but you don't know what. And, you know, one of the things is a ministry does not have to be something official. You don't have to go make it a nonprofit organization. You don't even have to come up with a name for it. It can just be something that you're doing to serve others the way that God's called you to serve with the talents and everything that He's given you. One of the things that we've been talking about is things that you can do to help elderly people. If you look for a few elderly people, maybe from your church or just in the community, and you do these things, you don't have to have an official name to your ministry or even call it a ministry, but that's a ministry. So I wanted to talk though today about being discouraged because you're not seeing results. Um, this is something that happens a lot. First of all, there's a couple reasons for that. First of all, Satan's attacking. He doesn't want you to serve God, and so he wants you to get discouraged, and maybe he's even keeping you from being able to do what God's called you to do. Another thing is that it can just be God letting you go through this difficult trial to test your faith, to build your faith. And let me say, testing your faith doesn't mean that he's testing you and he's grading you and, oh, you've got an F, you've failed, man. Oh, that's terrible. No, even if you got an F, he wouldn't say that you're failing. He would say, okay, these are the things that we need to work on. Okay. But he already knows what those things are. He's just giving you that test to bring those things to your attention. Okay, I shared some time ago about this man that showed up at my house and was yelling at us and yelling at the house and everything else, and how, I didn't think of this at the beginning, but I thought of this maybe like 2 or 3 hours later, that we needed to pray for him and that maybe God had brought him to our house to bring to our attention so that we could be praying for him. And not that we needed to make ourselves unsafe in any way or anything, but just we need to pray for him because he really needs prayer, and prayer is super important and powerful. Okay, so we didn't realize that as we were going through that. That would have been awesome if we had realized that and started praying to God and asking him to help this man and everything else. That would have been so fantastic, but we weren't there yet. I don't know if we are, because we haven't had another situation like that yet, but we weren't there at that time, and that's okay. So we got, maybe a lower grade, if you want to. God doesn't really use grades, but if you want to look at it in human terms, we might have gotten a lower grade for how we handled that situation because we didn't pray. We didn't do anything bad or anything like that, but there was this thing that we could have done that we didn't do, that should have done, would have been best if we had done, which we didn't do. We did pray. We prayed for God to protect us. We prayed for the police to come quickly, and they came in about 30 seconds. But we weren't praying for that man. So that test, which was part of what was happening, that wasn't the whole purpose for what was happening, but it was part of it, showed us this is what we need to work on. So sometimes your ministry may not be seeing what you see as success because God wants to teach you perseverance and patience and endurance. In James, it says, consider it all joy, brethren, when you encounter various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces endurance. And let endurance have its perfect result, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. Okay, so that endurance is really, really important. It helps us to be lacking in nothing. So, and there can be other reasons too. Maybe there's something that you need to work on to make it a better ministry. I look sometimes at the numbers of how many people see my videos, and I feel like, oh man, there's hardly anybody watching this. Is it really worth doing and stuff? And then, God just tells me, yeah, even if you had one person that you're helping, it's worth it. And I know that that's true. But, it's like looking at those huge numbers that other people have, you start comparing and stuff. And there was even one time when I was jealous of somebody, I will admit it, and I had to go and confess that and stuff. But it was really cool because one of the things that my priest pointed out was God's watching your videos. That's kind of cool. but it's like that. Mainly the feeling that I get sometimes when I start comparing is I get discouraged, oh, my videos aren't very good and nobody knows about them and all that stuff. Doesn't matter, you guys, because if you're just helping one person, or like I'm going to share with you, even if nobody watched it, here's what's happening. Okay, so I'm going to go back a little bit to tell you about that. So 1991 was when I first started speaking places. And I first was asked to speak for the homeschool group that I was in. There were, I don't know, maybe 100 people or so at this one retreat. And so I was asked to speak at that. And they were a captive audience, so they were all there. So there were people watching me speak, which was fine. And it was very encouraging and everything. But then people from other groups started asking me to speak at their conventions and stuff. And that was a little nerve-wracking, but it was also just really, it really edified me. It built me up and gave me a little bit more confidence. So I went to those and no one came to my workshop. These were not retreats where they had one person speaking at a time like that first one. These were ones where they had like 50 people speaking at one time, and you could choose which workshop you were going to go to, and no one was coming to my workshops. And this went on for the first few months. Okay, I went to convention after convention after convention where they asked me to come and speak. They thought that I had something valuable to say, and no one came. And so I would just sit there in the room feeling discouraged, but not wanting to cry just in case anybody came in. And also because I had books to sell, so I needed to go to my booth afterwards and not look all tear stained and everything, but really, really discouraged and just feeling like, why am I even doing this? Well, my pastor asked me at one point, how are the conventions going? And I was so embarrassed, but I told him, no one's coming to my workshops and I think I'm going to stop doing them. I'll still go and sell my books, but I just don't see any point in teaching the workshops. And he said, well, did you pray about it when they asked you to do it? And I said, yeah, I prayed about it. And he said, and you felt that God was saying yes? And I said, yes, I felt like God was saying yes. And he goes, well, then you need to keep doing it. And he told me, don't just go in there and sit in the classroom. You get up there and you teach what you're going to teach. Even if nobody's there, you just put it out there in the atmosphere so that the angels and the demons can hear it and God can hear it. And you're just being faithful. And it doesn't matter if nobody comes, you just do that. So I did that. I felt really stupid because sometimes somebody would come and look in and I'm teaching an empty room. Okay. It was really, really horrible. But after a few times of doing that, my friend and I were at a convention. She and her husband were the ones who published my books. And so she always came with me to the conventions. And we were at one up in Oregon. We lived in California. And so I was there. I was in my empty classroom, just talking to an empty group of no people. And all of a sudden people started coming in, and there ended up being, I don't know, 6 or 10 people who came in. And in fact, I said, let's just sit in a circle. And so we all sat and talked because I could make it into more of a discussion with that small of a group. And it turned out that what had happened was she had left our booth with our books and she went, it reminds me of where Jesus said, go into the highways and byways and bring them in. But she went around looking for people at the convention and said, you need to go hear this speaker. And she'd drag them there and bring them. And that's how they all came, kind of against their own will, I think. But after that, a very interesting thing happened. And it wasn't because like these people told people, oh, she's a great speaker or anything like that. Because after that, I think our next one was in Fresno, California, miles away. Nobody there would have heard anything about my talk up there. All of a sudden, all of my workshops were full. I mean, and there were times where they were like, okay, we've got to close the doors because otherwise we're going to get shut down by the, what do you call it? The fire guy, the fire marshal. And again, I don't think that it was because I was so great or anything like that. God definitely had something that he wanted to say, and he managed to say it through me, even in my frailties. But he was the one who was bringing people. It wasn't me. I'm absolutely confident of that because there was no difference between that time up in Oregon and the time in Fresno and thereon. Other than just what God did. There wasn't, my teaching didn't get better. I didn't have better marketing. The one time that there was quote unquote marketing was when my friend was going out making people go into my workshop. But other than that, so it was God. And what my pastor had said was very true. You just be faithful. when you're faithful, then God will bring the fruit. And so I want to give you that same advice. Whatever it is that God's calling you to do, just keep doing it. Yes, look and see if there's some way that you can improve your presentation, depending on what it is or anything like that, or some way that you can improve so that you will see fruit. But the fruit's not going to come from you. It's going to come from God working through you. And like we've looked at in some of the Now It Will Spring Forth lessons recently, it's our weakness where God is shown strong. So this was my weakness. I couldn't attract anybody to my workshops. And that was God using that weakness so that he could be strong through this. So just don't be discouraged. And when I say don't be discouraged, I'm not saying you should just like pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Call some people, ask them to pray for you. Maybe you're already having people pray for you, but tell them what's going on. Even though it may seem really embarrassing, tell them what's going on, be humble about it, and say, I think that I need to just do this, even though I'm not seeing results, and God's going to work with it. I'm having that same experience right now with my books. I shared a little bit about this in another video, which may be scheduled for before or after this, I'm not sure. But anyway, it's like with my books, I haven't done any advertising. And when you're just on places like Amazon, there's no way that people can find you if you haven't advertised. The only way that people can find me is if they've heard about me because I've told them about my books, or someone else has said, hey, you need to read this book, or it's been in like I'm involved in these groups where we share each other's books in our newsletter and stuff. So, somebody being told about it, but it's not like you could get onto Amazon and if you'd never heard of me, you're not going to see any of my books. So I need to do some advertising. And sometimes it's really discouraging because I've been writing these books. I get really, really good reviews from people, and people say, oh, they're so good and everything, but they're not writing reviews, et cetera, et cetera. And so it gets really discouraging. But here's the thing. I know God has called me to write those books. In fact, I know that the reason that I didn't die with my husband like I was supposed to is because God wants me here to write these books. And there's sometimes that I feel like the sooner I can get these books written, the sooner he'll let me go to heaven. But I try not to be that way. This is what he's called me to do. So even if no one ever read them, you guys, I would still put them out there. Because I know that he's called me to do that. And because I've seen how this principle works, that you just do what God calls you to do. You don't pay attention to whether or not you're seeing fruit now. I mean, how many people have there been who have written books and it's not until after they're dead that lots of people start reading it and be blessed by it? So who knows? I could write 50 books. There's 50 books that I'm planning in this series. I could write 50 books and have 5 people read each one of them, and that may be all. It may be all that God ever wants to read them, because you know what? If it helps one person, it's worth it. So that's the other thing to think about, is you don't have to be seeing these huge results. Okay. Yeah, I would love to see thousands of people reading my books. That would just be wonderful. Of course, I'm human. But if just one person is reading them, and that one person is having their life changed and they're growing closer to Jesus because of that, then it's worth it. It truly is worth it. And that's kind of where you have to have your focus, is even if I can just bless one person, even if I'm not blessing any people, but I'm blessing God. That's a big thing, because this is all about worshiping God. It's not about people worshiping us. It's not about us getting attention. It's not about us seeing the results of our work. It's about us worshiping God through our service. All right. So I hope that that encourages you. If you're getting discouraged, I would love to hear from you. You can, if you're part of the Pray, Serve, Go group, then you know how to get a hold of me. If you're not, just join the Pray, Serve, Go group. You don't have to do anything in the group. You can just send me messages if you're discouraged and you need some encouragement, and I would be happy to do that. But if you join the group and you share on the group, you're going to get a lot more encouragement, because that's what we're there for, is to encourage each other, to help each other, to share with each other our experiences so that we can help each other in that way, and to pray for each other. All right. I love you all. I will talk to you later. And if you have any questions, let me know because I can do other videos that answer that. All right. I love you all. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.